So a bit of good news for Jonathan Dowdall. His house has sold.
Yeah, good or bad news, I suppose, depending on your
good price, yeah.
Yeah. The house has been sold for nearly €800,000, which is a huge amount of money. Jonathan Dowdall remains in prison. His release date and these things are always, they're
closely
not
guarded for security reasons.
But he's due out early next year, basically. So he's approaching the end of his sentence. When he gets out, he will be put on the witness protection program, and that 800,000 presumably has a mortgage on the home. After paying that off, that money would be made available to him, and the state, I think, will have access to that money and set him up in a home somewhere abroad.
Can I make a little correction? Which is
go on.
Something that everybody gets wrong.
Okay.
And I only know a little bit about this.
Yeah.
I only know a little bit about certain little things, but because of my work with Joey O'Callaghan and on the Witness Protection Programme over the years. So the Witness Protection Programme is largely misunderstood.
Yeah.
You are only on the Witness Protection Programme when you are giving evidence, okay?
Yeah.
So after you've given your evidence, the process to sign you off the Witness Protection Programme starts.
Okay.
So Jonathan Dowdall will probably be signed off the programme as such.
Yeah.
Now, what the state will do is they will liaise with other territories, usually in English-speaking countries, states like the US, Australia, England. I mean, there has been some witnesses that have gone to, to European countries like France and that. But by and large, people want to go to an English-speaking country. They will liaise with their equivalents in that country, and they will assist these former state witnesses in setting up a life, a home, helping them maybe get a job, the equivalent of what they left behind before they went witness.
Yeah, because they're not allowed profit from being a state witness, I suppose. So if you're on the dole here and you go and give witness against some major gangland criminal, the state is not allowed then set you up in a £1 million mansion in Florida and pay you a big stipend. Because obviously that would be seen as being coercive or giving people a motivation to become a witness.
But they will help you sign on with your new identity, sign into the new social welfare service of whatever country that you're going to, and they'll help you with that. Now, it hasn't always been as clear cut as that, and I've spoken about this before, because our witness protection programme is not wrapped in any legislation. So it's actually just run by the Gardaí and by the Crime and Security Division of the Gardaí. Historically, and I know of cases where people were and have claimed that they were both promised and some given large sums of money in the aftermath of this. Very difficult to get any information, official information, very difficult to wrestle anything from the Gardaí in relation to it, because of course it is,
by its nature, secretive.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, however, like we see in the history of the Irish state, when something is secretive, it's not always in the public interest that things remain highly secret, because it doesn't get exposed to oversight in the same manner as other things.
Well, you're relying on good people to be running the program with, I mean, you're in their good faith, basically, that they are professional individuals who are, sort of sticking to what loosely held laws or protocols exist, and that they are doing their best, I suppose, to relocate the witness and to keep them safe. And again, in the past, a lot of my own information is historic, but historic as in, this, in the last 20 years, the last 15 years, but witnesses have complained that they've been relocated. They're given a liaison officer to contact should anything happen. They're on their own though, They're not given security. There is this idea that they have somebody on the end of the phone who's going to show up on their doorstep as soon as they hear, a rustle in the bushes. It doesn't work like that. You're pretty much your own first, line of security and safety. There is a liaison officer given, but in cases of people I've spoken to, the liaison officers have often been retired or have retired. By the time they're phoning, they're gone. And they haven't been assigned another one. I don't know whether the witness protection program is as useful nowadays as it was in the past.
No. I mean, I think it was very possible for somebody to disappear in the backwaters of America, for example.
Pre-social media as well, it was a lot easier.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There wasn't images of you all over the internet. There wasn't kind of, even when there isn't images of you all over the internet, when you don't exist anywhere, when there's no trace of you whatsoever, that can be a huge red flag.
Yeah.
And for a family, like the Dowdall family are all in this witness protection program. His wife, his children, his father, the father who was his co-accused. And he has already been released. I can't remember his name.
Patrick Dowdall.
Patrick Dowdall.
Yeah.
And obviously both Patrick and Jonathan were involved in that, torturing that man in this house, which is sold. But the whole family will be relocated together. There will be efforts to put Dowdall back to work. But Dowdall's health is bad.
Yeah.
And it was bad at the time he was giving evidence during the Regency Hotel. He has some spinal issues, which I understand were causing a bit of issues when the Irish were trying to find a country to accept him for relocation.
Yeah.
Because it's like something that's going to need medical attention in the future.
Yeah. I mean, when you saw Jonathan Dowdall in court, the pictures of him that are repeated in the media, there's a handful of them, 4 or 5 pictures that get one of them with Gerry Adams, and there's one of them Mary Lou, and there's another one of his candidate photo where he looks very fresh-faced and young. But when we saw him in court, he looked anything but. He aged quite dramatically, I would say. Pallor. Yeah, and not looking in any way like the blonde and shiny face that we see in our papers whenever we mention him. Even during the trial, his medical issues were prominent. They were heard during the case, and he spoke about them.
There was a letter, wasn't there, from the prison to the judge in relation to his medical issues. And but I mean, I suppose the sale of this house, this should be the final chapter of Jonathan Dowdall. But will it be? How will he cope in the witness, in life after, shall we say, the witness protection program? How will he settle? How will he stop talking?
Well, yeah, look, I mean, we've seen it. Obviously, the US are always 20 years ahead of us. And we've seen the sort of long-term fallout of the witness protection program in the US, where people en masse went in there in the 80s and 90s from the US, from the Cosa Nostra, from the mafia. And we've seen, after a period of time, many of them lapsed into criminality and ended up before the courts again. But also many of them just didn't find it a good way to live their lives. Now they've come back and become podcast stars, I was
going to say lapsed into podcasting as well.
Yeah. But I mean,
But the threat will diminish as time continues. I suppose the power of those that are your enemies will diminish. Some of them will die away. So lots of things do happen to make people feel safer. And realistically, let's look at Dowdall. And I mean, Dowdall came to the table as a state witness, as he faced a murder charge himself. He obviously wobbled and decided he was going to take the easy option, or so it looked like maybe at that time. But in doing so, and in the evidence he gave before the courts, he made enemies of like a lot of the dissident organisations.
Yeah, no, I mean...
The old school IRA, shall we say, the Hutch organisation, and the Kinahan organisation. I mean, he really went out there to make himself an enemy of so many. But realistically, which of those organisations is going to try and track down Jonathan Dowdall and do anything to him? I don't necessarily think any of them would.
No, I don't think any of them would. I totally agree with you. Like, he was funny in his evidence, and even in his statements, his formal statements given, like he tried to put the boot into Gerry and Patsy Hutch in particular, but he was also kind of pointlessly trying to say, for example, he spoke about how the Hutches really started the feud.
Yeah.
Like, it was
sort of like,
say, I'm sorry.
Curry favour with the Kinahans and saying that.
And also spoke about his sorrow for the death of David Byrne. And
forgotten about all that.
I mean, it was totally and utterly pointless in terms of the evidence. Do you remember he said it was actually the Hutches who started, and it was Gary Hutch's fault, and the Kinahans weren't to blame. There was not particularly necessary in terms of evidential value. He also made a point of saying, "Oh, Mary Lou, Sinn Féin are, I've no anything I've done in terms of the Hutches has nothing to do with Sinn Féin. He tried to square that off. He also tried to square off some of the stuff with the dissident figures as well. Yeah.
In particular, like obviously Pierce Macaulay was, who has since died, but was one of his key figures and connections within the sort of the larger dissident organisations, and he had visited him in prison and was trying on the stand to lie about visiting him when there was prison records to show. You don't walk in and out of a prison without there being a record that is held presumably by the state, by the Department of Justice ultimately, and is going to be used in court if you were sitting there telling lies about it.
Yeah.
So he was...
Yeah, he was trying to kind of curry favour, and wasn't there a couple of occasions where he wouldn't confirm the names of some of the dissidents, even as their names were given in court?
Oh, 100%.
So it was like a lot of things that Jonathan Dowdall did. It was very transparent, wasn't it?
Chaotic.
And chaotic, and anything but a master manipulator. Like he'd hit you over the head with the points he was trying to make, and even as he became a state witness, even as he crossed that Rubicon and gave evidence against his former associates, he was also building in his excuses, wasn't he? Like, again, didn't serve anything, but he was saying that, in fact, they betrayed him and then he betrayed them. Like, it didn't matter, but it was reminiscent, I think, of what we've seen in some of those other mafia podcasters, where people like Sammy the Bull Gravano, he'd always make sure to make the point, John Gotti had betrayed me, and that's why I betrayed him. I had no choice. So Jonathan Dowdall did some of that justification. So I don't know, that probably... The fact is that he was a failed witness, and he was a
failed witness because at the point, I suppose, that he's giving his evidence, and it's before the judgment came back finding Gerry the Monk Hutch not guilty of murder. I mean, at that point, he was of the belief, Dowdall, that he was doing well in the witness box, and he was also of the belief that he was going to be brought back again and again and again to give evidence against every one of those Regency shooters and the hit team, because he named every last one of them over the course of his evidence. I remember us sitting down at the end of it and, putting together the list that he had given, like as regards the amount of people he had named during his evidence of committing a crime. As we said, he wasn't believed by the judges, and he wasn't seen as a good witness. So
the heat has gone out of it, I think, because of his failure as a witness. I don't think the Hutch organisation would, look at him as, I mean, who knows? We don't.
Who knows?
But I mean,
the Hutch organisation just, to me, seemed to be still ever more focused on the Kinahan organisation, if they have firepower in them or if they have anything to offer up, which is kind of largely considered that if anything should occur now, it would probably be only in the aftermath of Daniel Kinahan's relocation to Ireland and his place, him being placed before the courts, if that's going to happen. But like, the Hutch organisation didn't show a huge amount of firepower during the Hutch-Kinahan feud. Senior members of the organisation say that was a decision not to behave in that fashion, not to kill innocents and not to kill sort of low-hanging fruit in the same way the Kinahan organisation did. I think the Gardaí would have a different opinion on that, and they would suggest that they simply didn't have the firepower, the wherewithal. They didn't know the power of what they had gone up against in the Kinahan organisation. But I think Dowdall is just not a big enough player for either of them, and I think he's seen as a bit of a ridiculous, failed character.
I mean, it's a stark contrast, I suppose, when you see Gerry Hutch attending, for example, as Kelly Harrington there was a ceremony or a night out in her honour in the North Inner City, and Gerry Hutch is comfortable attending that. And although we weren't there personally, you hear that he was warmly received by local people who'd attended that. So that's a very stark contrast to how Jonathan Dowdall would be received as he walks out of prison, beyond direct threats against his life from any criminal organisation. And Jonathan Dowdall wouldn't be comfortable walking around the inner city, even if he was given a pass, as they say, by all the...
He issued with a Garda information message that there's a threat to his life as he gets ready to release, I wonder. I mean, Yeah. Like Dowdall, there's still people very closely connected to Dowdall who have been very openly living within the territory where the Hutch organisation exists. I think if that was a couple of years ago, it was the other way around and it was in a territory ruled by the Kinahan organisation, male, female, old or young, they'd have been shot dead.
Yeah.
Whereas the Hutch organisation don't seem to have that MO.
No. I mean, I think...
I'm not saying they're wonderful. I'm just saying there doesn't seem to be that MO. Now, at the same time, they, Gardaí would suspect they have been linked to certain shootings of innocent people.
Oh, absolutely. And there's no doubt that Jonathan Dowdall, in the run up to that trial, there was threats, very serious threats issued against him. People that were close to him that had no involvement were certainly living in fear. There were people calling up to his home. There's no doubt about that. There was other incidents, not to get into them specifically, where there was fears that homes are going to be targeted that were linked to him. So that threat level absolutely existed, and there's no suggestion that the Hutches are the Hutch criminal organisation are some sort of choir boys. But I think what happens is the heat goes out of it. I mean, can you see in another 10 years' time Jonathan Dowdall hosting his podcast and talking about the history of it?
No, I cannot. But I think there's a kind of an attitude to Dowdall that he almost shot himself in the foot, didn't he, really? You know what I mean? He probably should have taken his chances on that murder trial. And, if both had been found not guilty, he would have walked away somewhat of a localized hero.
Yeah.
He turned rat informant, and now he's the guy with egg on his face. There's his house sold.
Yeah.
There's his life in Dublin over. There he is going to God knows where with the family to try and establish himself and to try and live in secret for the rest of his days, and his family along with him.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose the thing in his favour is he's an electrician, a good electrician by all accounts, and he has a trade.
But I wonder, can you, that's hard work. That's physical work. If you have serious spinal issues, are you going to be able to do that work?
Well, I don't know, but it's better than most of them who come out of prison on that thing who have never worked a legitimate day in their lives. So I suppose he does have a chance. But if, like the house, which is a lovely home,
somebody's got probably a bit of a bargain there, have they? 795,000 for, a 4-bedroom, 3-bathroom, marble tiled home with a pond out the back and various other paraphernalia that is very difficult to, I'm sure if you saw it, it would make sense, but it's all a bit strange. And, it's very nicely done up, and there's office space, a converted attic, sunny south-facing garden. It's located in perfect walking distance to the Phoenix Park and onwards to Dublin city centre. I'm not sure you'd get a house for that of the same.
No, I mean, it's a great location. And if you like Japanese fish, you've got a pond in the back. I mean, which has always struck me as a very odd bit of the Jonathan Dowdall story, his love for kind of ornamental fish. But so be it.
Anyway, so look, see whether that or not that is the end of him. And if you have any questions about Dowdall, even back to the Regency trial, about what's happening going forward, we are going to run a Q&A podcast for listeners, and you can contact us on a Gmail account.
Go on.
I'm going to now, I just can't, the way I have that short-term memory thing. I just want to get it right because Clodagh set it up for us. It's called crimeworldpod@gmail.com. So that's crimeworldpod@gmail.com, all lowercase and no gaps or commas or anything like that. Or you can contact me as well on my DMs are open. And unlike the last time I did something on this, when you made me say you can slide into my DMs, I don't mean that.
You cannot slide into a DM.
You made me say that, and I didn't know quite. There was an innocence to that. So you can just send questions on organised crime to my DMs, which are open.
But not in a slidey way, just in a very
yours
direct
open?
way.
Yours are open, because I know people slide into yours all the time. You tell me.
Unfortunately.
Huh? And if anybody has any questions around that, I'm happy to answer it. But anyway, look, maybe it'll be something of interest to our listeners. Maybe it won't. But I heard it on another podcast and I thought, God, that sounds really interesting. And I do get so many emails.
Yeah, we do. We do get them all the time. And
we do. And even people suggesting, podcasts to do, which is always great. And anybody with information, we're actually pretty good at getting back. Sometimes things get lost in the DMs, but mostly I will get back to people, and you would as well.
Yeah.
And so throw in a few questions, anybody who has anything in particular they want to know that we don't waffle about, and we'll answer it as best we can. Nothing too rude, guys, okay?
If your feet
but anything personal around Niall, I'm very happy to
answer on my behalf.
On his behalf, right. Okay. Thanks, Emil.
Thanks, Nicola.
I'm Nicola Tallant, and you're watching Crime World, a podcast about criminals, drugs and the underworld in Ireland and across the globe. Make sure you subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you can be the first to watch all our latest episodes. You can also listen wherever you get your podcasts.